In the 5th year of my mission to win over the male lead, William Donovan forgot my birthday again. Instead, it was the villainous Stella Rhodes who sent a message. Right on time. Your birthday. So what? I snap my fingers and he still comes running, doesn't he? This time, I didn't follow the system's recommendation to break down in tears. Instead, I replied to her. Thanks. You're the only one who remembered my birthday today. She replied instantly with A. Then my phone started buzzing nonstop. Wait, did you send that to the wrong person? Seriously? Are you for real? That's pathetic. So, what do you want for your birthday then?
Ah, fine.
I'll come find you. You're allergic to mangoes. So I'll order a strawberry cake. Okay? Honestly, you're such a pain. The moment the doorbell rang, I gave the system a small smile. You only said I had to win over the main character of this world. You never specified it had to be the male lead. Did you? The usually chatty system went quiet for a moment. Then it stammered, trying to explain. What? What do you mean? The target is obviously the male lead. You and William are destined to be happy together. I couldn't help but laugh. A bitter, self-mocking sound. Ever since I arrived at the Donovan estate 5 years ago, the system had been selling me a fantasy, insisting that the current neglect and grievances were just tests of love, that William and I were fated for a happily ever after. Too bad now I wasn't so sure I wanted that ending anymore. I ignored the system and got up to answer the door. But the face that greeted me was William's, etched with impatience. He shot me a cold glare. Even if I forgot our arrangement, you didn't have to pull a stunt like this, using Stella to force me to see you. Ava, I never knew you were so manipulative. I froze. To get him to spend this one birthday with me, I had worked almost non-stop for 3 months, finally achieving a breakthrough in Donovan Corp's chipped development. William had been ecstatic. He asked me what reward I wanted. I had timidly asked if he could spare one evening for me. He agreed readily, and I was overjoyed, thinking our relationship was finally about to take a step forward. I never expected to be left waiting for nothing, only to be met with his breezy. I forgot. The click of high heels sounded from behind him. Stella, holding a massive cake box, was panting as she reached the 6th floor. She stood awkwardly between William and me, a strange expression on her face. So you didn't stand me up to be with her? You just completely forgot it's Ava's birthday today? William frowned. Why would I need to remember her birthday? Stella turned to look at me again, her expression complicated. After a moment of tense silence, William looked down at me, his voice condescending, as if granting charity. Considering your dedication to Donovan Corp, if you have a wish, just say it. I looked up, meeting his eyes. Any wish. William paused, unconsciously rubbing his nose and looking away. Of course. The system screamed in my head. OMG. OMG. He's blushing. Did you see that? Quick. Tell him you don't want anything. Just for him to spend one day with you.
But.
I just looked at him quietly for 2 seconds and took a deep breath. Then could you give me some money? William's smile froze, but I lifted my eyes calmly. Give me some money. I need to pay my rent. His face instantly darkened. He ground his teeth. So your true colors are finally showing, and you claimed you weren't after my money. William's fists clenched, cracking audibly. He sneered. Too late, Ava. You want to be Mrs. Donovan, don't you?
Then.
You'll spend the rest of your life slaving away for Donovan Corporation. He turned and stormed off, getting Stella to awkwardly hand me the cake. Happy birthday? I managed a weak smile. I know you only came to laugh at me, but thank you anyway. I closed the door, and the system started wailing again. Oh my god, what were you just doing? He forgot your birthday. He was clearly feeling guilty. Why didn't you use that to your advantage? Instead of saying something like that, I glanced down at the overdue rent notice from my landlady. What else was I supposed to do? A girl's got to live. For all these years, William had despised me. I was the chief engineer at Donovan Corp, yet my salary was lower than the cleaning staff's. The system was taken aback. But that's just the male lead giving you a hard time. He loves you, but doesn't know it yet. Once you're married, everything he has will be yours. Did it? The doorbell rang again. A delivery guy holding a cake box peeked in. An order from a Mr. Donovan. The system grew smug. See? I told you. He has you in his heart. Look, he even ordered you a cake. You're the one who pushed him away. Aren't you going to call him and coax him back? I stared at the cake, which was completely covered in sliced mangoes, and fell silent. Then I looked up at the system. Do you remember 5 years ago, the day I first arrived? I arranged to meet Stella at the coffee shop, downstairs from her company. The system was spinning in circles in my head. Host, are you absolutely sure about this? Are you really going to Rhodes Industries? Stella is only taking you in now to keep you away from the male lead. Later, when your feelings for him deepen, she will come after you even more viciously. I pulled on my coat, replying casually, but at least she'll treat me fairly. I won't starve to death in a strange city. Besides, for Stella to beat out all her siblings to inherit the company, she can't be some brainless socialite. And also, I didn't finish the thought. 5 years ago, I came to the capital alone to find my relatives. The security guard at the mansion looked down his nose at me and shamelessly kicked me out. It was William who appeared like a savior, golding the guard and bringing it, terrified me back to the Donovan estate. That's why, for 5 years, no matter how coldly he treated me, I always craved that first glimmer of light. Of course, I had also never forgotten that 5 years ago, the person walking beside William, who held an umbrella over my head and draped a coat over my shoulders, was Stella. Perhaps without that absurd decision 5 years ago, the three of us wouldn't be in this situation. Stella sat across from me, slowly stirring her coffee. You really want to come to Rhodes Industries? Why isn't Donovan Corporation Your life for the past few years?
You've practically changed yourself to that lab.
You come whenever William calls. More obedient than his family dog. I took a sip of my coffee because I don't want to be a dog anymore.
Stella paused.
After a long moment, she handed me a contract with a complex expression. Ava, I genuinely dislike you, but sometimes I also admire you. I've always kept business and personal matters separate. As a woman, I won't make things difficult for you at work. But emotionally we are still rivals. She stood up and extended her hand. Welcome to Rhodes Industries. I looked up, smiled softly, and took her hand before I appeared. Stella and William were the undisputed main characters of this world. Childhood sweethearts, a perfect match from powerful families. Until 5 years ago, when the old Mr. Donovan was targeted in an attack. It was his driver who took the fatal blow for him. With his dying breath, the driver asked the Donovan family to take care of his only daughter. And so, in front of everyone, Mr. Donovan announced that William was to marry me and take care of me for the rest of my life. William's face turned ashen. The man who had been gently comforting me the night before now looked at me with nothing but disgust. Back at the company, my assistant Paige started making frantic faces at me the moment she saw me. Confused, I pushed open my office door to find William sitting there, his face a cold mask. Leaving your post during work hours, Ava? Is this your professional attitude? You won't be getting paid this month. I pursed my lips but said nothing. He continued with a sarcastic sneer.
Oh.
I forgot. Without a salary, you can't pay your rent.
What?
Are you planning to shamelessly move back into the Donovan estate? The system suddenly piped up. He never comes to the RD department. He's giving you an out and he's talking about rent. He obviously wants you to move back in. It's just an excuse from a prideful male lead. But I suddenly felt a wave of exhaustion. 5 years. I didn't want to live like this anymore. Let's just forget it. Both the system and William froze. Forget it. Since I violated company policy, I'll resign. William shot to his feet, grinding his teeth. Do you think playing hard to get will soften me? Who do you think you are? You want to resign?
Fine. Get out.
And don't ever think about coming back. He swept everything off his desk in a sudden rage and slammed the door. On his way out, I silently bent down to pick up the scattered documents. My phone buzzed with a message from Stella. Monday is good for your first day, right? I bought you some clothes and had them sent to your place. Dress professionally when you come to work.
Don't embarrass me.
I looked at the message, and suddenly I smiled. On Monday morning, I stood before the Rhodes Industries tower. The system was still chattering away. Host, are you absolutely sure this is Stella's territory? According to the original plot, she will. I walked into the building and asked casually, she'll what? On your first day, she'll provide you with a full set of office supplies, arrange your workstation, and have her assistant buy you breakfast.
Wait.
Now that I think about it, she doesn't seem that villainous. I couldn't help but chuckle. I knew 5 years ago that Stella was never some spoiled, cruel socialite. If the system hadn't set us up in these inherently opposing roles, perhaps things would have been different. The elevator doors opened before I could step out. Stella was already waiting. She looked me up and down, her brow furrowing. Didn't I buy you clothes? Why are you still wearing that? I looked down at my own white blouse. Those clothes were too expensive. She cut me off. Told you to wear them, so wear them. Stop making excuses.
Come with me.
Your office is on the 18th floor. I was stunned. An office? I'm just an engineer. I don't need. Stella didn't even turn around. I say you need one. We don't make our chief engineer sit in a cubicle.
Also, your salary card.
She turned and handed me a bank card. A 3-month advance to pay rent. I don't want you getting evicted and embarrassing me. I stared down at the card, my fingers trembling slightly. The system whispered, host, something feels off. Aren't those supposed to be the male lead's lines? I sat at my new desk in a daze. An assistant, Chris, poked his head in. Miss Stone, Miss Rhodes wanted me to tell you that you'll be having lunch together. The chef in our company cafeteria makes amazing Cajun food. My head snapped up. The Donovans preferred bland food, and William had serious stomach issues. I was from Louisiana, but in the last 5 years, it felt like I never once tasted the food from home. At lunch, Stella and I sat across from each other. Chris came over cheerfully, carrying a steaming bowl of jambalaya.
Stella frowned.
I forgot to say no cilantro. I was taken aback. How did you know I don't eat cilantro? She gave me a look like I'd asked the dumbest question in the world. A bitter smile touched my lips. My phone suddenly buzzed with a call from William. I let it ring until it stopped. A moment later, Stella's phone rang. Stella glanced at the caller ID, her perfectly manicured fingers resting against the polished wood of the table. A faint, mocking smile touched her lips. She didn't decline the call. Instead, she placed it on the table and tapped the speaker icon. Stella, William's voice crackled through the phone, thick with poorly concealed irritation. I know Ava went to see you. She's throwing one of her little tantrums. Put her on. Stella picked up her fork, stabbing a piece of shrimp. I'm afraid my chief engineer is currently on her lunch break, William. Company policy strictly prohibits disturbing executives while they're off the clock. A heavy silence stretched across the line. I could almost hear the gears grinding in William's head. Chief engineer? William let out a harsh, derisive bark of laughter. Are you insane? You're giving her a C-suite title just to spite me? She's a glorified lab assistant, Stella. You're wasting your money. Stella didn't miss a beat. If the brilliant mind behind the Donovan core chip architecture is just a glorified lab assistant to you, then I suppose I should thank you for your catastrophic lack of business acumen. It saved me a fortune in headhunting fees. You don't know what you're talking about. The core chip was developed by my entire R&D team. Ava just Ava wrote 90% of the base logic while you were busy having stomach ulcers and throwing staplers at your interns, Stella cut in, her voice suddenly devoid of any amusement. The temperature at the table seemed to drop 10 degrees. Do not call my employees during their personal time again, William. Unless it's to grovel, in which case, send an email. I'll have my assistant filter it to the spam folder. She ended the call. The silence in the private dining room was absolute, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning. In my head, the system was making a sound like a dial-up modem crashing.
Error. Error.
Male lead's prestige has been challenged. Host, you must defend him.
Wait.
Processing. Host, why is your stress level decreasing? I ignored the glowing blue text flashing in my mind's eye. I picked up my spoon and took a bite of the jambalaya. The rich, spicy heat of Louisiana bloomed on my tongue, perfectly seasoned, without a trace of the cilantro I despised. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, sudden and unbidden. It wasn't about the food. It was the realization that for the first time in 5 years, I was sitting across from someone who actually saw me. Stella watched me, her sharp gaze softening just a fraction. She pushed a napkin across the table.
Eat.
You look like a stiff breeze would knock you over. We have a board meeting at 2, and I need you to explain exactly how much of Donovan's proprietary tech is legally yours. All of it, I said, my voice barely a whisper, then cleared my throat and spoke louder. I never signed the final IP transfer for the updated microarchitecture. William told me not to bother with the paperwork because, in his words, we're practically family, what's mine is yours. Stella's eyes widened, a slow, predatory grin spreading across her face. Oh, William, you arrogant, stupid boy. She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hands. Ava, I think you and I are going to make a lot of money together. The transition into Rhodes Industries wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a resurrection. For 5 years, I had been a ghost haunting the sub-basement labs of Donovan Corp, fueled by vending machine coffee and the pathetic, breadcrumb-like scraps of affection William occasionally tossed my way. The system had convinced me that the exhaustion was a crucible, forging me into the perfect partner for the male lead. But here, on the 18th floor of Rhodes Industries, sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. My office was massive, equipped with the latest triple-monitor setups, ergonomic chairs, and a whiteboard wall that I immediately began covering in complex algorithmic equations. My assistant, Chris, didn't roll his eyes at me. When I worked late, he didn't sigh heavily or complain. He simply appeared with decaf coffee and a gentle reminder that the building's HVAC turned down at midnight. By the end of the first month, the phantom weight of William's disapproval had completely vanished from my shoulders. I was thriving. The Nova project, a next-generation AI processing chip that I had originally conceptualized for William, only for him to dismiss it as too ambitious, was now fully funded by Stella. Host, the system piped up one evening, sounding deeply unsettled. I've been running diagnostics. The plot deviation is at 87%. The male lead has attempted to contact you 42 times this month. You have blocked his number, his email, and his carrier pigeons. He sent a carrier pigeon? I muttered, soldering a connection on a prototype board. Metaphorically, he sent his secretary to your old apartment. The landlady chased her away with a broom. Host, you are straying off the destined path. You are meant to be the soft, forgiving light in William's dark, corporate world. I'm a hardware engineer, not a desk lamp, I replied, adjusting my protective goggles. Besides, I don't have time. Stella needs this prototype finalized by the end of the quarter. Stella, 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 the system shrieked. Why do you care so much about the villainess's approval? She's just using you to ruin the male lead. The heavy glass door to the lab swung open. Stella walked in, holding 2 steaming takeout boxes. She had shed her blazer, her silk shirt rolled up at the sleeves, revealing the sleek silver watch on her wrist. I swear, if you die of starvation in my lab, the paperwork will be a nightmare, Stella said, setting the boxes on the only clear space on my workbench. Spicy garlic noodles.
Eat.
Now. I pulled off my goggles, offering a genuine smile. You didn't have to come all the way down here, boss. I was in the building. She leaned against the desk, crossing her arms as she watched me open the box. The rich scent of garlic and chili filled the air. William is panicking, she stated casually. I paused, chopsticks midair. Oh, Donovan Corp's stock dipped 3% today. Word leaked that their upcoming product launch is delayed indefinitely. Rumor has it, their lead engineers can't crack the encryption on the core framework. Stella tilted her head, a smirk playing on her lips. I wonder who could have possibly locked the root access with an unbreakable cipher before she walked out? It's not unbreakable, I said, twirling the noodles. The password is just extremely specific. Do tell. It's the exact date he promised to take me to the aquarium for our first anniversary, which he also forgot. Plus the chemical formula for mango. Stella let out a sharp, genuine laugh. It was a beautiful sound, devoid of the icy corporate armor she usually wore. You're wicked, Ava. I like it. She leaned closer to inspect the circuit board I was working on. The scent of her perfume, something crisp, like cedar and bergamot, washed over me. I noticed the way the harsh lab lighting caught the gold flecks in her dark eyes. Host. The system suddenly blared, its text flashing bright red. Warning. Heart rate increasing. Adrenaline detected. Please maintain emotional distance from the villainess. I swallowed hard, shifting my gaze back to my food. So, what's William's next move? I asked, deliberately ignoring the metal voice in my head. He's going to corner you, Stella said, her tone sobering. He's realized you didn't just take your talent. You took his future. He's too proud to admit it to the board, so he's going to try and drag you back by force or emotional manipulation. Be careful. I can handle William, I said quietly. Stella reached out, her cool fingers lightly brushing against my wrist. I froze. You don't have to handle him alone anymore. You're my people now. Nobody touches what's mine. System error, the system whispered faintly. Why does her dialogue sound like, wait, recalibrating trope parameters? Stella was right. It took less than a week for William to make his move. It was a Friday evening. I had left the office a little later than usual, stepping out into the cool evening air of the city. I was heading toward the subway station when a black Maybach pulled up aggressively to the curb, blocking the crosswalk. The rear door flew open, and William stepped out. He looked terrible. The usually immaculate male lead had dark circles under his eyes, his tie loosened, his jaw tight with suppressed rage. For a brief second, the old, conditioned part of my brain, the part the system had brainwashed for half a decade, twitched with an instinct to ask if he was okay. I crushed that instinct immediately. Ava, he barked, striding toward me. Get in the car. Hello, William. Goodbye, William, I said, sidestepping him. He moved faster, his hand shooting out to grab my upper arm. His grip was entirely too tight, bruising. Stop playing these games. It's been a month. You've made your point, all right? I admit it, the lab is a mess without you. Paige quit. The interns are useless. Come back. I'll double your salary. I stared down at his hand gripping my arm, then looked up into his eyes. There was no apology there. No realization of the emotional abuse he'd put me through. He was just a spoiled child demanding his favorite toy back because the other kids couldn't figure out how it worked. Let go of me, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Not until you listen to reason. Going to Stella? Really? You think she cares about you? She's just using you to get to me. The moment she crushes my project, she'll throw you out. He yanked me a step closer. You belong at Donovan Corporation. You belong with me. Yes. The system cheered. The possessive declaration. Host, this is a classic turning point. Weep into his chest. Tell him you missed him. I'd rather drink battery acid, I said, both to the system and to William. I ripped my arm out of his grasp. You don't own me, William. And frankly, your project is failing because you're a mediocre manager who relied on unpaid, uncredited labor to keep your ship afloat. I don't care if your company burns. William's face twisted into something ugly. He raised a hand, whether to grab me again or something worse, I didn't know. Tires screeched. A sleek, silver Aston Martin swerved into the bus lane right behind William's Maybach, the high beams flashing blindingly. The driver's side door opened before the car even fully stopped. Stella stepped out. She was wearing a sharp, tailored crimson suit that made her look like she had just stepped off a runway, or perhaps out of a very chic murder scene. Her stilettos clicked menacingly against the pavement. William, Stella's voice cut through the air like a physical blade. I believe I told you what would happen if you harassed my employees. William stepped back, his expression morphing from rage to defensive arrogance. This is a private conversation, Stella. Stay out of it. You're grabbing her on a public street next to my building. It became my business the second she looked uncomfortable. Stella walked right past him, placing herself smoothly between William and me. She glanced at me over her shoulder. Did he hurt you? Just my patience, I muttered, rubbing my arm. Stella's eyes snapped back to William, narrowing into dangerous slits. Get back in your car, William. Before I call security. Or better yet, the police. I'm sure the tabloids would love a story about the CEO of Donovan Corp assaulting a rival company's engineer because he can't code his own microchips. You scheming bitch, William spat. You planned this from the start. You poached her to sabotage me. Stella laughed, a cold, elegant sound. I didn't have to poach her. You practically gift-wrapped her and left her on my doorstep when you forgot her birthday and offered her the rent money she had earned 10 times over as charity. If anyone sabotaged Donovan Corp, William, it was you. Now, take your bruised ego and get off my pavement. William looked back and forth between us, his chest heaving. He pointed a trembling finger at me. You'll regret this, Ava. When she throws you away, don't come crying to me. He spun on his heel, got back into his Maybach, and slammed the door. The car sped off into the night. I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My legs suddenly felt a bit shaky. Stella turned to me, her sharp demeanor melting away instantly. She reached out, gently inspecting the arm William had grabbed. Are you all right? She asked, her voice soft.
I've fine, ibrid.
How did you know I was down here? Chris saw from the lobby window. Let's get you home. She opened the passenger door of her Aston Martin for me. As I sank into the plush leather seat, the system finally spoke. Its voice was uncharacteristically quiet, devoid of its usual manic energy. Host. What? I thought back, exhausted. I have been running a comparative analysis of behavioral algorithms. Male lead. William Donovan. Actions. Neglect, underpayment. Physical intimidation, mango cake.
Villaines, Stella Rhodes.
Actions. Advanced payment, emotional support, physical protection, remembers dietary restrictions. And your conclusion? The system made a soft ding sound. Recalculating target. Male lead status revoked. Error. Does not compute. Updating narrative parameters. Host. I think my developers programmed the wrong gender for the savior trope. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. Stella got into the driver's seat, casting me a curious, sideways glance as she started the engine. What's so funny? Nothing, I said, wiping a tear from my eye. Just realizing that the villain of my story might actually be the hero. Stella shifted the car into gear, a faint flush touching her cheekbones before she looked out at the road. Don't go planning a parade for me just yet. I still expect that prototype by Monday. You'll have it by Sunday, I promised. 6 months passed. The Tech Summit Gala was the event of the year in the tech world. It was where industry giants revealed their upcoming innovations. This year, it was an open secret that the summit would be a battleground between Donovan Corp and Rhodes Industries. I stood in the opulent restroom of the Grand Hotel hosting the event, staring at my reflection. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Gone was the exhausted, mousy girl in the faded blouses. I was wearing a sleek, tailored black gown, my hair styled perfectly, my posture straight. "Host, you look stunning," the system praised. It had completely changed its tune over the last half year. It now acted as my personal cheerleader and Stella's biggest fan. Current confidence levels, 100%. Current dependency on William, 0%. I've even updated my user interface to a dark theme to match your villainous aesthetic. "Thanks, system," I murmured, adjusting my earrings. I stepped out of the restroom and made my way to the grand ballroom. The space was packed with journalists, investors, and rival CEOs. At the far end of the room stood the stage where the presentations would take place. Stella was waiting for me near our company's designated booth. She was wearing a breathtaking deep blue suit with a silver lapel chain that caught the chandelier light. When she saw me, her breath visibly hitched. She stepped forward, her eyes sweeping over me. "You clean up well, chief engineer," she said, her voice dropping a fraction of an octave. "You don't look too bad yourself, boss," I replied, feeling a familiar warmth spread in my chest. Over the last 6 months, Stella and I had become inseparable. We spent late nights in the lab, early mornings in the boardroom, and lazy Sunday afternoons at her penthouse, going over blueprints while her golden retriever slept on my feet. The line between professional and personal had blurred entirely, replaced by a profound, unbreakable partnership. "They're drawing the lots for presentation order," Stella said, gesturing toward the stage. William just arrived. I looked across the room. William was holding court with a group of nervous-looking investors. He looked older. The strain of the last 6 months had etched deep lines around his mouth. Despite throwing millions at headhunters, he hadn't been able to replace me. He had eventually brute-forced a workaround for his core chip, but from the whispers in the industry, it was highly unstable. He caught my eye. He stiffened, then broke away from his group and marched straight toward us. "Alert! Toxic waste approaching," the system announced. William stopped in front of us, looking me up and down. A flicker of something like regret passed through his eyes, quickly replaced by his trademark arrogance.
Ava.
"You look different." "I sleep 8 hours a night now, William. It does wonders for the skin," I said flatly. He sneered. "Enjoy the party. It's the last one you'll attend as a pseudo-executive. Tonight, Donovan Corp is unveiling the Apex chip. It's going to render whatever cheap knockoff you've been building over there completely obsolete." Stella didn't even look at him. She was inspecting her fingernails. "Is that so? I heard the Apex runs so hot you could fry an egg on the motherboard." William's jaw tightened. "Teething issues. Resolved. We present right before you do. I just came to give you a fair warning, Ava. When you fail tonight, my door is closed. I won't take you back. I'd rather be unemployed and living under a bridge than step foot in your building again," I said, my voice steady, carrying clearly over the ambient noise of the room. Several nearby investors turned to look. William flushed deeply. He opened his mouth to retort, but a booming voice from the stage interrupted him. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We are about to begin." William shot us one last venomous glare and stalked off toward the front row. "He's hiding something," I whispered to Stella as we took our seats. "He's arrogant, but he's not stupid enough to present a fundamentally flawed chip on a live stage. He must have found a patch. Let him hang himself with his own rope," Stella replied, leaning back and crossing her legs. "We have the Nova. We have nothing to worry about." The presentations began. A few minor companies went first, showing off iterative software updates and minor hardware tweaks. Then, the lights dimmed further, and William's face appeared on the massive screen behind the stage. William walked up to the podium. He gave a charismatic smile, launching into a well-rehearsed speech about legacy, innovation, and the future of Donovan Corp. "For 5 years, we have been developing a microarchitecture that will redefine artificial intelligence processing," William proclaimed. "Tonight, I present to you the Apex Core." The screen flashed, displaying the intricate, glowing schematic of the microchip. The moment the schematic appeared, my blood ran cold. I sat forward, my eyes locking onto the screen. I didn't just recognize the basic structure. I recognized the exact routing of the logic gates. I recognized the specific, highly unorthodox thermal mitigation paths I had designed at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, 3 years ago.
Stella, ihists, grabbing her wrists.
That's not his patch. That's my Phase 4 blueprint. The one I never submitted to the company servers. It was on my personal hard drive. Stella's posture instantly went rigid. "Are you sure?" "Positive. Look at the data pathways on Quadrant 3. I designed them in a spiral sequence to save space."
No one does that.
"He stole my personal files." Stella's eyes darkened into a terrifying, glacial fury. "When you lived at his estate, did you leave anything behind?" "An old backup drive," I whispered, realization crashing over me. I thought it was wiped. He must have had his tech team extract the deleted files. On stage, William was basking in the applause of the audience. The investors were nodding approvingly at the impressive specs displayed on the screen. "Host, this is a disaster." The system panicked. "He's claiming your genius. If he patents that first, Rhodes Industries won't be able to release the Nova chip without facing a massive copyright lawsuit." William concluded his presentation. "Thank you. We will be opening the floor for a brief Q&A. A journalist in the front row stood up. "Mr. Donovan, these specs are light years ahead of your previous models. Can you explain the inspiration behind the spiral logic pathways in Quadrant 3? William didn't miss a beat. A sudden stroke of inspiration, really. Our dedicated team worked tirelessly, but the final integration was my personal breakthrough. Sometimes, you just have to look at a problem from a completely new angle. I felt physically sick. He was standing there, bathed in applause, stealing the last 5 years of my life. Stella stood up. The entire room seemed to hush as she stepped out into the aisle. She didn't wait for a microphone. Her voice projected perfectly, sharp and authoritative. A brilliant breakthrough, William, Stella called out. Truly inspiring. But I do have one technical question regarding your stroke of inspiration. William's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but he recovered.
Ah, Stella Rhodes.
Please ask away. Stella walked slowly toward the front of the room. The thermal mitigation pathways you highlighted are incredibly efficient, but according to your schematic, they route directly through the tertiary memory cache. Wouldn't that cause a catastrophic feedback loop if the processor runs at over 80% capacity for more than 3 minutes? A murmur ran through the crowd. William gripped the edges of the podium. We have implemented software limiters to prevent that. Really? Stella arched an eyebrow. Because anyone who actually designed that architecture would know that a software limiter wouldn't catch the microstutters in the hardware relay. In fact, running that chip right now, as configured on your screen, would result in a hard crash. Stella turned to look at the massive screen, then back to William. Unless, of course, you're missing the localized dampener bridge that was detailed on page 42 of the blueprint you stole from my chief engineer. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Cameras began flashing wildly. This is slander, William roared, his face turning purple. Security, remove her. She's trying to disrupt my presentation. It's not slander if it's verifiable fact, I said, standing up from my seat. I walked down the aisle to stand beside Stella. My heart was pounding against my ribs, but the presence of the woman beside me anchored me completely. I looked up at William. You stole an incomplete, corrupted draft from my old hard drive, William. I abandoned that specific architecture 3 years ago because it was fundamentally flawed. You're lying, William shouted, losing his polished composure entirely. This is Donovan property. You developed it while under my roof. I developed it on my personal time, using my personal equipment, and never signed the IP over to Donovan Corp. I replied calmly. And I can prove it. I pulled my phone from my clutch, tapped a few buttons, and connected it to the Open Wi-Fi presentation casting network. Override the screen. I told the A/V booth. The image of William's chip vanished, replaced by my live terminal code. Every piece of foundational code I wrote for that architecture contains a dormant watermark. I explained to the silent, rapt audience. A ghost in the machine, if you will. It's a standard anti-theft measure. I typed a single command line into my phone. Execute protocol. Mango. On the massive screen behind William, his beloved, stolen schematic reappeared. But this time, every single data pathway shifted colors, pulsing with neon pink. And right in the center of the chip's logical display, formed by thousands of lines of raw code, a massive, undeniably clear message appeared. Property of Ava Stone. Donovan R&D is incompetent. The ballroom erupted. Journalists were shouting, investors were frantically pulling out their phones to call their brokers, and William stood frozen at the podium, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. Stella leaned closer to me, a wicked, triumphant smile on her face. Protocol Mango? I figured if his cake almost killed me, my code could kill his company. I whispered back. William stepped back from the podium, staring at the screen in horror. He looked at me, his eyes wide, pleading. Ava, wait. Ava, please. He was begging. The proud, unyielding male lead was begging in front of the entire industry. I looked at him, feeling absolutely nothing. No pity, no anger, no lingering thread of the trauma bond that had chained me to him for 5 years. He was just a pathetic man who had built his castle on someone else's foundation. Let's go, boss, I said, turning to Stella. We have our own presentation to get ready for.
Stella nodded.
She reached out and, in front of the flashing cameras and the chaos of the room, she took my hand. Her fingers intertwined with mine, a firm, grounding warmth. Ladies and gentlemen, Stella announced over the noise, her voice ringing out clear as a bell. If you're quite finished looking at Donovan Corporation's stolen, defective garbage, Rhodes Industries will be presenting the true future of AI microarchitecture in exactly 15 minutes. We suggest you take your seats. We walked back up the aisle together, hand in hand. Host, the system whispered. Male lead's reputation destroyed. Company stock, plummeting. Character arc, terminated. Good, I thought. And host, yes. I've officially filed a bug report to the central hub. The romance parameters in this world were improperly assigned. Reassigning true love status to Stella Rhodes. Initiating happily ever after sequence. I squeezed Stella's hand. She looked down at me, her eyes soft, a genuine, beautiful smile breaking across her face. The 5th year of my mission was supposed to be the year I finally won over the male lead. Instead, it was the year I destroyed him and walked into the future with the villainous. And as the lights dimmed for our presentation and the crowd held its breath waiting for us to change the world, I knew I wouldn't have it any other way.